BayRadio International at 4 mainland Spain on a Tuesday, which means we herald the return of Rich Reynolds, our US correspondent. I can see you too on the video today. That's great.
From Reynolds World Broadcast Headquarters.
Excellent. I'm loving it. So it's been a bit of that sort of avoid the Trump story scenario for us again today as we were putting things together early this morning. There didn't seem to be a story that didn't involve him again.
I know we have a lot of Trump stories today, and a lot of them about his mental acuity. And but you have to go a long way to keep from talking only about that. But we do have quite a bit of breaking news that we need to talk about right off the bat. But there is going to be a lot of Trump information and as we go along. So if you're into that, then don't worry.
It's coming up, but we're not going to
coming up. Like a freight train coming through the tunnel.
That's almost a Bruce Springsteen lyric in there. Right, let's start with this 4.4 magnitude earthquake in Los Angeles. Aftershocks as well. Of course, the area well known for the earthquake scenario. It's very worrying for people who live there, despite the fact that they live there regardless.
Well, they get hit with that quite a bit. I lived in Los Angeles very briefly a number of years ago, and I got hit by a few. And even living in Oregon, we got hit. That whole corridor up and down the West Coast gets hit with them quite a bit. But so, we're kind of talking about a 4.4, but when you come down to it, it's really not that big of a quake. From all reports that we're getting, nobody died, nobody was injured. There was very, very little, if any, damage. And, it went all the way down to San Diego, which is a good couple of 100 miles. So everything seems to be okay. But as I said, on the West Coast, you're kind of used to that sort of thing. A 4.4 isn't much of anything.
You usually get some decent pictures, dramatic pictures of stuff when these kind of things happen. And 4 miles from Pasadena, TV news helicopters were out and about, and they were showing water spilling from the upper floor of Pasadena City Hall.
Oh, I have no doubt about that. I didn't see that footage, but you're right. You always get some good footage, especially of things shaking and things falling off shelves and that sort of thing. And only a week ago, they had a 5.2 in Southern California that was felt in LA. So they've had two in a week. Have you ever been to one? Have you ever been in part of an earthquake?
Yeah, in Cyprus a few times. It's quite bizarre when the whole world moves.
I know. One time, the first time it happened to me, I was taking a nap on the couch, and it felt like somebody was shaking the whole couch. And another time was when I was at work. So it's when you get hit the first time, you think, as long as nobody gets hurt, you're thinking, hey, that's just pretty cool. I've never been in one of these before, but as we know, they can get kind of dangerous.
Anyway, enough of the earth moving for you, Rich. Let's look at some more developments in the Middle East, and tensions are growing. We almost seem to be saying that each time we talk, but there are more and more concerns of a major breakout of conflict in the area, so much so that the US are now sending a guided missile submarine to the area.
Well, this all comes off of the assassination of their president last month, and the Iranians are blaming Israel for the assassination, and the U.S. is trying to tamp everything down. The U.S. and the U.K. and France and Germany trying to tamp this thing down to keep it from growing into anything. But you're right. An aircraft carrier group called the USS Abraham Lincoln, with all the ships that come along with that, and also the USS Georgia, which is the nuclear submarine, is being sent to the area, just trying to keep everything quiet. But you kind of wonder if all these ships are coming into the area, how quiet it's going to be, and what the Iranians are thinking, because right now nobody really knows what's going to happen.
Civilian aircraft pretty much all pulling out from flying in the area as well.
Yeah, if you're interested in flying into Israel or into anywhere in that area on some sort of a pleasure trip, you're probably not going to have to be able to do that for at least for a couple of weeks. It's being tamped down by every major airline right now.
All right, let's get into it. News of the Donald, and
here we go, and we're off.
Overnight, it had to be Don and Elon. It wasn't really a very incisive interview, was it, to be honest?
No, I only heard pieces of it because it was 2 hours long, and I guess you could catch it on YouTube if you want, or any number of other sites. But the two of them seemed to be in some sort of a love fest. But it was nothing short of Trump and his normal list of complaints against how he's being mistreated and misspeaking, and attacks on Harris, attacks on Tim Walz. So. It was all really bizarre from everything I saw.
Yeah, he certainly.
Did you get a chance to see much of it?
I just saw what was shown on CNN and Fox this morning, so not the whole thing certainly, but basically it was a bit of a snooze fest. I mean, he was rambling pretty much as usual. Seems to be doing quite a lot of that these days, Mr. Trump, and basically attacking. He keeps on rolling out the same stuff as well, calling Kamala Harris, the Democrat representative, as the border czar. She wasn't in charge of the border. He keeps repeating it in the hope that everybody will believe that she was in charge of talking to countries where refugees were coming from to the United States in a way to try and alleviate the situation. She was not in control of the border. That wasn't her job.
But it even got more bizarre when he was talking about how beautiful Kamala looked on the cover of Time magazine. Not many people read magazines anymore, I know, and especially Time magazine, but it's a big thing being on the cover of Time, and they had a really nice drawing of Kamala Harris on the cover of Time, and I think the headline was "Her Turn" or something like that. And so he said, "Boy, she really looks great in that. She looks as great as Melania does."
Yes.
Oh, brother!
And then he said,
"You got to kiss up to your own wife."
She's a really beautiful woman, he said.
Yeah, really beautiful woman, and he's right. But he said some crazy things. Like he said, the biggest threat to the world is not global warming, where the ocean is going to rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 400 years. The biggest threat is nuclear warming. Nuclear warming.
Talked about the war in Ukraine, didn't he? I think that's what he was alluding to. What was it? He said Russia defeated Germany with us, and they defeated Napoleon. They've been around a long time. They're a big fighting force. It's very unfair. We're in a bad position, and I'm not going to blame exclusively, but I can tell you I could have stopped that. Basically, blame Biden for Russia invading Ukraine.
Well, which he has in the past, but he also, when you consider that this relationship between Musk and Trump is so bizarre, because Musk bounced him off of X 2 years ago, and since then he's reinstated him. But Trump doesn't do much on X or on Twitter, and so
he's got his own Truth Social network now.
I know, which is not exactly a preferred social network from according to how many people subscribe. But there's a big kiss fest going on between the two of them. But both of them are incredibly weird and incredibly odd, to use a Democratic term. And in this, we're not even talking about this problem with the EU, which you're very much involved with.
Yeah, he's got a few issues on his plate there, Mr. Musk, with not complying with the new EU rules, and I mean he doesn't seem to be bothered that it cost him quite a large amount, like something, I can't remember the exact figure. It was something like either 6% or 12% of the annual worldwide revenue for X, formerly known as Twitter. But he seems to carry on regardless, in much the same way as Mr. Trump does. They're very similar in some ways, despite not getting on in the past. And Trump did say at the end, didn't he, that he would start using X more often?
Yeah, he did say that. Now, whether he absolutely does that or not, remains to be seen. But what I found interesting is that the EU is trying to crack down on the amount of disinformation, and I really love the fact that the EU is doing that, because in the States you don't have those sorts of checks and balances. So, the states really do take freedom of speech to the nth degree. You can say things that are not true and get away with it, which I kind of wish there were checks and balances. But when the EU jumped in, Trump campaign spokesman jumped into this thing and said that the EU ought to mind their own business instead of trying to meddle in the U.S. presidential election, which clearly they're not. But
Do you think sometimes, Rich, that your compatriots might forget that there's free speech and then there's other speech, which is
Right.
incitement to racism, incitement to riot, which is being peddled on social media platforms generally? I'm not just singling out X. And the fact that these entrepreneurs that own them should do a little bit more to manage the sort of content that is peddled on their platforms because of the severe consequences they can have. Of course, Elon Musk has been having a run-in with the UK government as well, the new Labour government, about it.
Well, I do agree with that something should be done. And matter of fact, Congress has gotten involved in the past and has said to these platforms individually, a lot of them with Facebook, because Facebook, of course, owns Instagram and WhatsApp, to say, you need to pay attention to this sort of thing and cut down on the amount of misinformation that you're broadcasting. But it comes and goes. I mean, they will tamp down, and then all of a sudden, and a year goes by, and they go, oh yeah, we forgot about all these other 100,000 things that went through. But Americans are very, very sensitive about freedom of speech. Anything that's going to curtail my right to say something stupid, my right to say something incorrect, needs to be guarded by the Constitution. And there are people who are very, very adamant about this sort of thing. And we've absolutely opened a new door here, 10 years ago when Facebook came in and when Twitter came in, and we're in new ground here as far as misinformation, and it's going to get worse and worse and worse. So you're absolutely right. These sort of safeguards and these guardrails need to be kept up to ensure that all the information, as much information that is correct, is out there.
So Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, said at one stage that the benchmark should be what you wouldn't say openly in public. You shouldn't be able to say openly on social media. I think that's a pretty clear delineation, and that can be policed. But of course, those rules are different in different countries with the amendment that we've been talking about in the United States.
I couldn't agree more. It absolutely makes sense.
He's admitted it himself. Maybe I've gotten worse, Trump says. He's talking about his discipline. He's been accused, in fact, perhaps admitted himself, he's lost a bit of control since Kamala Harris replaced Joe Biden on the ticket, and perhaps again since we saw her running mate added as well.
Well, they seem to be the current team of Harris and Walz seem to be energetic and full of fun and joy, to use their term. And to look at Trump now, he seems defeated and down, which is quite a departure from where he was, during the convention. He seemed to be upbeat and on the attack and blah, blah, blah. And now the tables have been turned. It seems like he is really kind of a defeated guy. But, one of the things we wanted to talk here, and there's been a lot of chatter in the States about this and on media outlets and such about him, something's being called Trump derangement syndrome. It's how he seems to be slipping, the lying, the name calling, the narcissism, being obsessed with crowd sizes and bigotry, and how much he needs to be loved by everybody. I mean, his own retired chief of staff, John Kelly, who's a guy of incredible integrity, said, "God help us," to him being reelected, and to pick on Joe Biden. And Joe Biden, is 81 years old, and everybody, even every Democrat, will tell you he seemed to be slipping a little bit, especially over the past couple of months. But he's a guy, he's very empathetic. He's a man of integrity. He's a man who's very sympathetic to people's causes, and to go on the attack to a guy like that. One thing is for sure, though, before we really dive into this, is that when Reagan was running for president, he was 69 years old, and there was a lot of talk in the States about somebody being so old being president. And, he ran for, he was president for 8 years. Clearly, this is a time where I don't think in our lifetime you're ever going to see an 81 and a 78-year-old man on a ticket ever again. I mean, I could be whistling past the graveyard, but I don't see this happening.
No, I suspect not, because of what's happened in the meantime. We have heard from President Biden in the meantime. He was talking about his reasons for not running again.
Yeah, he said essentially he got squeezed out. The Democratic leadership said if you continue along this path, if you continue and the polls keep cratering like this, you're going to take down every Democratic senator, every congressman, everybody who's running for office. You're gonna haul them down into this black hole, and it's going to be really hard for them to recover. So you need to take one for the team here and just kind of bow out gracefully, and thank God that's what he did. I mean, look at the difference in what you're seeing right now. You probably and your listeners probably don't see as much American television as I do, which is all the rallies and all the excitement that's happened right now, and due to the fact that she's up by 4 or 5% in the polls, where we were down 5%. I say we, but the Democratic Party was down. Yeah, is kind of it speaks to the whole situation.
And ahead in 3 of the swing states as well, which is quite important. And just one last thing on Joe Biden. It was great to see him on the beach with the family this week. It was. Come on, that's what an 81-year-old man should be doing. He should be on the beach with his family.
Well, we watched YouTube of a show in the States, a satiric show called The Daily Show, and they had footage of Biden and his wife on the beach. They said, does this guy look like he's threatening anybody? He looks like he should be. He looks like an 81-year-old man sitting on the beach. So, stop attacking him. Leave him alone. Let him do his job.
Right. So Trump is rattled, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. I would say absolutely rattled. He keeps quoting, my audience is at this speech, and that speech is 10 times what it used to be. Actually, it's as big as Martin Luther King's speech.
Exactly, yes.
It's crazy.
And obsessed with Kamala's crowds as well, because he said that basically it had been photoshopped when it hadn't at all.
Yeah. No, it hadn't been. I mean, we saw the raw footage, and there were 15 or 20,000 people on the tarmac, to greet him. He's just he's obsessed with being liked, and not always a positive thing when you're running a country.
We're getting some strange nicknames out of him as well, aren't we? Laughing Kamala Harris and I can't say it.
Kamabla.
Kamabla. Yes.
Oh, yesterday he said in a speech that he said, "What's her last name? I don't think anybody knows the last name is Harris." Really? People don't know her last name is Harris?
My favorite one was he was doing his usual rubbish on Truth Social. I'm sorry, you can only call it that. He was saying that she's too low IQ and dumb to debate him.
Yeah, she's dumb. She's a former prosecutor and district attorney and attorney general and senator. Yeah, she's dumb.
Can't wait till September.
People get to these positions being stupid.
But they are going to debate in September, aren't they? So I'm looking forward to that.
They are going to debate in September, and I'm looking forward to it. I know there's going to be at least one debate on September 10th on ABC, but whether or not there are going to be 3 debates, who knows? I am really looking forward to the vice presidential debate if it happens. Walz against J.D. Vance. I mean, I'm not going to leave the apartment at all. I'm just going to stay here and wait till it happens. But right now, nothing's scheduled, so who knows what's going to happen on that.
I hope they do. It'd be brilliant TV. So let's just wrap up a couple of things on Trump then. What's this about him confusing various black politicians? Because first of all, we couldn't work out what story he was on about, where he said he was in a dangerous helicopter ride and it could have gone down, and everyone else who he was saying that was with him was going, no, we weren't on that. What's this about?
So he said he almost crashed a couple of years ago, and he was talking to the mayor of at the time mayor of San Francisco, a man named Willie Brown, and he said Willie Brown told him that Kamala really wasn't very smart because they were dating at the time. And in fact, Willie Brown says, "I've never been in a helicopter with Donald Trump. I don't know what you're talking about." And it turns out after they did a little digging, it was a guy named Nate Holden, who is now 95 years old, who was from Los Angeles and said, "Oh yeah, I was in a helicopter and we had made an emergency landing back in the 90s." But apparently Willie Brown is short and black, and Nate Holden is tall and black, and so Of course, they said he got us confused, and everybody, we all look alike, and that sort of nonsense.
That's what he said. I thought that was a brilliant quote. It wasn't Trump who said that. It was the fact that he said that. He said Trump
right.
Says Trump mixed us up because we all look alike.
Yeah. And apparently, one of the jokes was, I'm sure as the plane was going to crash, Trump was talking to Willie Brown about Kamala Harris. I'm sure that's exactly the conversation that was transpiring as they were heading toward the ground.
There are so many quotes. It's just almost impossible for us to talk about them all. We'll talk about lies and distortion in a moment. Just one other one that I thought was great was the fact that he was saying the reason that he didn't die when he was shot at that rally was because of immigration. Did you hear that?
No, I didn't hear that one. What?
He said he was turning his head to look at an immigration chart. So he was saved by U.S. immigration because he turned his head to look at a chart, and that's how the bullet clipped his ear instead of hitting him.
So, see, you can't make this stuff up.
I love it. I love it. Right. What about this is great because, you were talking about the likes of national broadcasters not really checking what's said and what's done, but we know there is a body that does that, and they're the non-profit journalists, aren't they? They're the people that are holding him to account.
Well, one of the things that happened after he gave that speech in I don't know where it was, and he gave his last speech that was 64 minutes long. NPR, National Public Radio, which is nonprofit, did a complete check on everything he said, and they found 162 lies in 64 minutes. That's pretty good, 2 a minute. Things like, I think our country right now is in the most dangerous position it's ever been in from an economic standpoint. And in fact, the U.S. economy is quite strong. The inflation is down to the lowest it's been in 3 years, and it was a lot higher when Trump was president.
There are still some worry points, but it's certainly not in the most dangerous position it's been in.
No. Everybody thinks and the stock market is going great guns, but he's always pointing out things were better when I was president, and when you do any sort of fact checking, you realize no, it was not. Things were a lot worse, and it was during COVID, and the United States did not exactly do a great job during COVID. I mean, they lost more people. They were slow in developing vaccines, and it was a real, it was a bad time around the world. We know that. He was talking about from a safety standpoint, gangs on the street. Well, actually, there's nothing being done on gangs, but violent crime is down, murder, rape down from when he was president in 2020. He's worried about gangs. And he also said we have a lot of bad things coming up. You could end up with a depression of the 1929 variety, which would be a devastating thing. It took many years and decades to recover from that. Yeah. Actually, it happened in 1929, and it was done in 1941 when the U.S. entered World War II. And no, it's not a depression, and we're not heading into a depression. And it's just crazy talk.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, there are far too many for us to list here. We've listed a couple of them, but if you'd like to find out more about that, then easy to find the 162 lies and distortions in a news conference checked by those broadcasters, non-profit broadcasters, which is the point, good, I think.
Really, really top-notch journalists at NPR.
Excellent. Okay, and just before we leave the main Trump story, he's got a question from Mike, who actually is traveling across Spain at the moment, heading towards Quesada.
Hey, Mike.
Somewhere at the moment. Where did there was a little bit before where Mike and Maxine and Chino and their 2-year-old grandson, who are driving across Spain at the moment from Manchego down to Quesada, heading from the UK. Anyway, Mike is saying how the Democrat campaign has been re-energized, but there is a sense that Trump will refuse to accept the outcome of the vote if he's defeated. Yes, he's got form.
Huge problem. That's a huge problem, Mike, because he didn't accept it last time, and look what happened. They ended up storming the Capitol, and he is such a sore loser, and he's I'm sorry to say this, but he's a big baby. He thinks everybody's against him, and he said publicly, "If I lose, that means it's rigged," and that is simply not going to be the case. There are foreign operatives at work trying to mangle themselves into certain elections. It happens in the UK. It's happening in the States. We know that's going to happen. But I got to believe the FBI is on it, the CIA is on it, and they're going to do their best to keep that from happening. But if you lose, you lose, and that's it. But certainly the big problem. One big problem is going to be on November 5th on Election Day, but the big problem is going to be on January 20th, which is Inauguration Day. So a lot can happen in between in those 3 months. So, Mike, you're entirely correct in being apprehensive.
One thing we have seen, though, when that happened last time around, a number of those that were out on the streets on Capitol Hill have been receiving quite long jail sentences. Might deter people in the future, do you think?
You would hope. I mean, Trump's saying, I'm going to pardon all of those people because they're innocent. And in fact, a couple of hundred people have been convicted. It might even be 1,000 people, but they're very slowly finding those people because of video. And there are cameras everywhere, and these people are being put into jail. Somebody this past week just got a 20-year sentence. So I would hope, and I would pray that it would deter people from storming the Capitol. And if you're listening out there, please don't storm the Capitol, any Capitol, and just stay at home. Do your rooting in from the quiet of your living room.
Let's we were going to try and leave the Trump stories, but there's been some more talk on the BayRadio WhatsApp from Mark, who says that, of course, the difference this time is that Trump isn't the current president. Neither is Kamala Harris, of course. And Mark saying that it may depend how many swing states go blue. He'll kick off if he loses, though, because he'll end up in jail.
Yeah, that's great in theory, but I can't see anybody putting him in handcuffs and taking him to jail. That would trigger some sort of I wouldn't say a civil war, but that's going to trigger a lot of unrest, and probably is not going to happen. I think a lot of people would love to see him in stripes.
That perhaps wouldn't happen at the time if he was refusing to accept the result. But surely, if he's not president, then maybe some of these things that are hanging over his head may come out to roost afterwards, should they come to trial.
Part of the problem is that there are too many judges that have either been appointed by him or appointed during his tenure in office that are sympathetic to him, and so they're likely to be kind of lenient. Look what the Supreme Court did. I mean, the Supreme Court voted 6-3 that a president has more power than they've had in the past, and that's aimed toward him. Now, what happens is they say, we're going to let Trump off the hook for blah 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 for election interference and all this other stuff that he's done, and then you turn around and what you've done is you've given more power to a Democratic president who's just about to start. So that door does swing both ways. So it could be kind of a situation to really watch. But I don't see him being put in handcuffs, and it doesn't matter if he's a private citizen. He wields a lot of authority in the country right now, unfortunately.
Okay, let's move on and to the judge ruling against Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the fight to be on the New York ballot. Why is that?
Well, it's a little bit, the situation is that everybody who's from the UK or from anywhere else in the world has got to remember that in the United States, you're not on the ballot for the country. You're on your state's ballot. You're on 50 ballots, and so your campaign has got to go in and get you registered to run for president in your state. And so you've got to do it 50 times. It's kind of a pain, but that's kind of the system. And New York is I believe, population-wise, I believe is the third largest state, might be fourth right now. And so what happened was he got kicked off the ballot because he falsified where he lived. He said he lived in upstate New York in this little town. It turns out that he doesn't live in upstate New York, that he lied on the application. He was renting a room from some woman in a small town called Katona, about 40 miles north of Midtown. And a judge, they sued him to say, you don't really live in that town, so you falsified your record, so we're kicking you off the ballot. The thing is, that now opens it up to 49 other states, because if he says on any of these that he is a Los Angeles resident, by the way, that's where he lives. He's married to actress Cheryl Hines, and they have a nice big spread in LA. But if he said on any of these applications in Nebraska, in Florida, in Mississippi, if he says, hey, I'm a resident of New York, and he lies, he could get kicked off those ballots too. So his whole campaign could completely fall apart.
He's on social media talking about training ravens at his Los Angeles home. So, it's kind of like, it's not like being caught in a lie. It's like, well, it is, we know where you live.
Yeah, he makes a big thing out of living in LA and having a movie star wife. And he said, in the other breath, he said, well, I do spend some time. I pay rent in that house. And it turns out he paid her $500 a month after this was all found out. Right. So he's a complete shyster, and
he qualifies as a politician, then, doesn't he?
he's kind of a politician, It's kind of sad.
All right. Some controversy towards the end of the games in Paris, then. Jordan Chiles, bronze medal, final decision. Not what you wanted, but you did come out top of the table.
Yeah, they did. They did have a relatively good Olympics. They finished number one in total medals and tied with the Chinese for 40 gold. And so I think I'm real proud of our country, and they did extremely well. And it was a great Olympics. And my hat is off, and I think everybody's hats are off to the French. They did a sensational job on these Olympics. But Jordan Chiles, finished in third place for her floor exercise. And she's getting a lot of press for this, not because of her performance, but because she had her medal taken away, because her coach allegedly, was 4 seconds late in requesting a revision, not a revision, but he wanted the score revisited, and you had to do it within 60 seconds. Apparently 64 seconds was is what he said. And so she lost her medal, and it was given to a Romanian. And so there's a lot of stink going on in the States about this and about how she was wronged. And at the end of the day, the the International Olympic Committee said, we're not going to talk about this anymore. It's done. She lost her medal, so let's move on. That's what they say.
It's 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 hours, I suppose, is the way that they looked at.
Did you get to see any of the Olympics? Did you?
I've just been so busy. I've seen a bit here and a bit there. Saw some of the skateboarding, which is what I wanted to see. I saw loads of pictures of Snoop Dogg.
I saw some of those. I saw some of those divers, and a couple of them looked a lot like you. I'm telling you. They got up on those boards. They go, "Is that Callum?"
I hope that wasn't the meme of one of the divers I saw that was going around. Anyway, so it was a big ending as well. Tom Cruise, involved. And basically, it's going to take him between now and 2028 to get there on that motorcycle to LA, isn't it?
Yeah, that was kind of a nice stunt. He jumped. For those who didn't see it, he jumped from the top of the stadium, got on a motorcycle, grabbed the Olympic flag, and took off, and then. The whole bit ended up on the West Coast, and Snoop Dogg performed, and Red Hot Chili Peppers, and Billie Eilish, and it was kind of fun. It was kind of fun to watch. They really put on a good show.
Even Gavin Newsom got involved.
He did. He really did. Yeah, he was in the crowd. Gavin always finds a way to get his nose involved in any kind of press.
Yeah, photo opportunities. He's a politician. That's what he does. That's what he does. So we're looking forward to that then in LA. Meanwhile, we can return to Trump in a moment. Just before we do that, I'm just checking on. No, we better do it now. It's not just the Celine Dion story, because she basically rebuked Trump for using that song off Titanic, My Heart Will Go On.
And who would use a song from Titanic about your campaign? That's what. I know. I love but that. Even she said that song seriously. But there's part of it. Part of the stink going on is about Isaac Hayes. Isaac Hayes co-wrote "Hold On, I'm Coming." The Sam and Dave song that everybody's familiar with. It's been around for 60 years
as well, hasn't he? And to be honest, I thought Okay, you can see why Celine's story got the whole headline, but he's been using all kinds of songs, and people just have not been happy about it. Now the family of the late Isaac Hayes are basically going to sue, aren't they?
Yeah, they're involved in that. And, there's a whole thing about the Village People using YMCA and Macho Man and that sort of thing. And, these campaigns use this music. They don't get any approval from anybody. And now these artists and their artist families, they want their pound of flesh. And mostly, if they don't align with the candidate, which you can understand, they're saying, just stop using my music. And I really can understand it. So it's they're going to sue and somebody's going to make some money out of this, and it's not me. I know that.
It's a decent way to finish, though, isn't it? Not with Celine. I'm going to finish with Sam and Dave with their hit version of that Isaac Hayes song. Hold on, I'm coming. Rich Reynolds here every week, everybody, Tuesdays. And you're off to Germany. Hope you have a great time.
Thanks. See you next week.